Okay, good evening. Welcome to the PAC's latest podcast on the 9th of November 2020. I'm Tristan. I'm here with my co-hosts Nick and Lawrence. And we're welcoming to our show Jamie Holbrook, who is a friend I made very recently for the same group of overall people. I believe you know a few other people in the same group. And probably, I was going to ask, did you connect with people in the group because I know you're interacting, this is what this is all about, really. Was that the reason, or was it just sort of general?
I mean, well, my first friend of that group was my friend Marina, who we're very close now, and that was through IF in Kingston, the International Youth Arts Festival.
Oh, excellent.
And from there, it's just been pub nights out and meeting people, open mic nights, and just meeting some amazingly talented people, like singing instruments, all sorts. It's been fantastic.
Brilliant.
The IF Festival, because actually, you know, Nick, Lawrence, you remember Ed Asher? Remember Ed Asher? He used to do stuff for our band.
Yeah, he's a DJ, right?
Yeah, his girlfriend works for IF, I think. When a friend of ours used to do our DJ stuff for us, his girlfriend works for IF, I think so.
Oh, very nice.
Is it in Kingston, this festival as well?
Yeah, so from what I understand, it's the Kingston-based festival, and I think there's other ones based around other areas, but IF seems to be focused mainly on Kingston with the Rose Theatre, I think the Arthur Cottrell in Kingston University, Act Theatre, and things like that. So yeah, it's just like amazing place to just see where people, especially the youth of Kingston, are developing all these works and where all the new talent's coming from. It's fantastic, which obviously this year we've missed out on, but hopefully next year, fingers crossed.
Oh, wait, when is this festival usually on?
It's usually during the summer months, so sort of like June towards August sort of time. Right in the middle of summer, so we have it's always great performances. I've participated, I think, once there as an actor and once there as a volunteer, but I can't remember if I did the acting in it. Yeah, it was quite a while ago at this point, so...
Well, it's a good way to start, actually, to be fair. It's a good way to begin. So I've got a few different questions, but to be fair, that was a good introduction. Nick, do you want to go next?
Okay, well, I was going to basically ask how you got into sort of acting in the first place.
Well, so this is a story that my friends and family had heard a million times, but I'm going to tell it again because it's what happened. So,
okay.
As a young child, 11, 12 years old of age, I would be that one kid that was sat in the back of the library, not doing much, reading his books, and just being as unsociable as is humanly possible. Signed up for GCSEs in year 9 for drama studies, and just turned out I had a knack for it. Went from there to a summer youth school where I ended up doing my first lead solo performance in a musical. And from there, it's just been continuing onwards through university education, amateur dramatics, and trying to break into the professional circuit, which especially this year has been extremely difficult.
Of course.
And at the minute, we're just currently I'm working with some of my friends to do some readings every couple of weeks. So,
Script reading.
Yeah. So we're doing all sorts of things at the minute. Some theatre shows, a couple of films. Most recently, we did a Halloween-themed one of ghost stories, which was quite entertaining. We all got dressed up for it, and I went as a slutty nurse because what else?
Of course,
good
yes.
fun.
Interesting.
Tell me you have a rendition, please.
Again?
Could you give us a little excerpt of that play?
Well, I'd have to look up the script for it. It's something we just literally read off the script. We don't rehearse or anything. It's more just to keep us in sort of practice of it, discuss bigger themes and all that sort of thing. Very sort of theoretical view into the whole theatre side of things.
Okay.
To a degree, we all have to act at some point, whether it's in a job interview or in front of your girlfriend or your parents because, you come home drunk or stoned or you're in trouble or, even white lies to a degree is acting. Yeah. Do you think it's kind of an instinctive thing in us, or is it something that has to be sort of taught? And
I think, honestly, everyone's got that little bit of that acting ability in them. I think that to certain degrees, because if any of you have worked customer service jobs before or retail jobs before, you know what it's like for a customer to be screaming in your face and the whole time you have to be smiling at, yes sir, no, absolutely, this is exactly yes, you're exactly 100%. Even though when I get back in the stock room, I'm going to talk about you to all my friends and talk about how much
Yeah,
an
you
idiot
dream
you
of the
were.
day you get to tell them to fuck off.
Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah, we don't get that till management, unfortunately, but fingers crossed for that day.
One of the themes we've talked about before is the mask that people have to wear, and you know, specifically in music, we were talking about it, how as a frontman in a band or whatever, you put on a mask to become that character, but that mask is also something that people carry from day to day life. You know, you quite often you get people saying, "How are you?" And you don't say, "Oh, my nan died, and I've lost my wife, and the house burnt down." You say, "Oh, I'm okay. You know, everything's fine." You know, and that to a degree is kind of acting. But obviously, in your kind of desired profession, it's a bigger evolution, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, also, I suppose, like, because you work in the film industry, Nick, and I suppose you probably worked with a few different actors when you've had to, or at least you.
I've always found it quite weird that sometimes I find soap actors are actually better than screen actors.
You mean TV actors? TV actors.
Yeah, I think Doc Cotton is a better actor than Adam Sandler. You know,
Absolutely agree. 100%.
I know he's a comedy actor, and comedy acting there's a grey area between in the acting. I think comedy acting is a lot different, but there are a lot of specifically American actors that just go up and just are themselves all the time. That was one of my main problems, actually. I know he's not American, with Sean Connery. He was just the same character in every film. When he was a Russian submarine commander in The Hunt for Red October, he was, "Oh, splendid! I was Russian submarine commander." And when he was a Spaniard, in Highland, he was like, "Oh, splendid! I'm a Spaniard now." And when he was an Irishman,
he doesn't have to change anything.
He was just being himself, you know.
So
but there are some actors. Pardon?
I know
when
what
he
you
was
mean,
Bond,
mate,
when he was Bond, was he still being himself then? When he was Bond, that was him.
That was that's how he always is in all of his films. You know, he's not really a method actor, is he? He delivers lines and he does his job, but on a really kind of on a scale, he's sort of kind of at the bottom of that scale. I think you get some soap op. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on that note, it's just a case of like there are certain celebrities and stars and actors who will establish themselves so superbly in one role, and from that moment on, I don't know whether it's a case of directors asking them to do the same thing, or they just feel like they have so much star power that they can keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
For me, it's just I'd love to see a bit of variety. Like, it doesn't have to be completely drastic. It doesn't have to be like your Daniel Day-Lewis, where he's literally building a house with his bare hands and not washing for 3 months. But, you know, a little bit of variety here and there wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I think this is part of the issue of some performances today, where you are just seeing those same over and over again characters. Just it's sort of typecasting to its worst kind of effect.
And I don't like soaps. I don't watch them, but actually, I do find some performances really gritty, really kind of in depth and powerful, even though they're kind of churning out the same sort of dialogue over and over again, and you know. But you know, some of the performances are more powerful than I've actually seen on the big screen.
Yeah,
for people like Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt and all those people, I go up there and I'm just watching them, you know, just wearing different clothing, but just being essentially themselves again. That doesn't impress me.
Is that also about the differences between the more kind? Just quickly say, is that also about the differences between the more theatrical kind of acting and the more sort of like what would be the opposite of theatrical acting? I don't really know what that is because I don't really.
Well, theatrical acting and screen acting are different, aren't they, Jamie? Massively.
If you can explain that, that'd be helpful. Yeah. Jamie,
I mean, I've unfortunately never had any experience with screen acting, but what I find with that is screen acting is a lot more about sort of like your positioning and the camera work and all this stuff. Like the acting obviously comes into it and to some extent, and we have seen some amazing performances with that. Where theatre is more of a live or extreme live venue, they see every single mistake, they see every single emotion, they see everything that you give to them, which I think that adrenaline brings out the best in people in terms of performance, because you have to know everything to the exact point that you need it, whilst also having those slight moments of, oh, can I try a little bit of something here? Can I try a little bit of something there? Just one huge experimental process, whereas filming, I find, and again, I've not done any screen acting, so it could be completely wrong on this, But for me, film acting seems a lot more structured, a lot more rigid in terms of this is exactly what we need to see, and that's exactly what you need to do. I don't know that there's as much freedom in terms of creativity for those sort of roles.
Well, what I've heard, there's 3 different kinds, isn't there? Because you've got TV acting, film acting, and then obviously theatre. Well, there's probably more, but those are the 3 main ones, aren't they? The 3 main disciplines in acting.
I think with theatre,
so, yeah.
I think with theatre, it's a lot more projection. You have to be kind of a bit more sort of almost exaggerated, because with a camera you can pick up on the nuances of someone's face, and you know, you can actually get their emotion from a squint in the eye, whereas if you're on stage, you kind of got that little squint in the eye, that little bit of upsetness in the eye has to be more kind of dramatic, for want of a better word.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. So it's not, again, like you're saying, with the...
Go on.
So say Lawrence, go on.
No, sorry, Lawrence, go on.
I was just going to say, what I find impressive about acting is just to follow on is there is no opportunity to break character and redo a take. It's all got to be fluid from start of scene to the end. Whereas in acting, you know, on the TV, you could just get you could get it line by line, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be as fluid. Yeah.
But you mean theatre? Yeah.
But with a theatre, there's a much more regimental process of learning the lines and rehearsal than there is with TV thing. Because with a TV thing, you do have the option of having take 1, take 2, take 3 ad infinitum until you get the role right. Whereas acting, you kind of got to go up there with the whole script in your head, all the emotions, all the things. I think it's a lot more technical, a lot more difficult thing to do. It's much more frightening.
You mean being on theatre, on stage, basically?
Yeah, I think it's a much more frightening environment.
So, Jamie, is your background stage acting or TV acting? Remind me, what's your main?
So, pretty much 100% of my career so far has been stage acting in various forms of sort of like musical theatre, straight out acting, in those 2 fields mainly. But also on the academic side of things. So not only have I done a few amateur productions in terms of like London theatres, I've also had the privilege of, like, you know, going through university for both my undergrad and my masters, learning about all these different techniques and all these different aspects that go into acting in both film, stage, TV, and screen. And I think it's like Nick said earlier, like with film and TV, there's obviously that ability to get the more precise emotions without having to be as dramatic about it. Whereas theatre is very much, again, sort of like projecting outwards in terms of, I can't just be sad, I have to be sad, sort of thing like that. So.
Yeah. Because it's interesting when you watch like film and television from different eras, for example, because obviously when it comes to theatrical performances, you can't always see that online very easily. But I've been watching a lot of different, especially with lockdown, watching a lot of different things. And I've noticed how, like, obviously, like, for example, with, let's take the old Star Trek, you've got like William Shatner was always known for being very overly theatrical, but that's because he's trained as a theatre actor, isn't it? You could say. Or, for example, in the Bond films, you had most of the actors, I think, were film actors, but then you had, like, I think Timothy Dalton was a theatre actor, and his style was quite different. So it's quite interesting to see the differences between the 3 main disciplines, isn't it?
I don't think William Shatner's a good example of a good actor.
No, he's not. I mean that. No. I mean he's an example of a good. Well, he's a good example of how you can be effective in a very theatrical, exaggerated way, but it probably wouldn't these days. It was good at the time in its own way, but these days it would be seen as a bit sort of like overly dramatic. You know what I mean?
Or ham.
Yeah, exactly. He's known for that, isn't he? Yeah, exactly. So it works.
I'd argue there's always a place, though. There's always a place for ham acting in certain aspects.
That's
like
what
pantomime,
I meant,
for example. Fantastic.
Yeah, of course,
Or
serious
sci-fi.
film dramas, not so much.
Well, sci-fi, though, again, that's why there's always that fine line where you can have a bit more, like in sci-fi and fantasy, because there's always these exaggerated characters. Which is quite interesting.
I hear that Alec Guinness hated Star Wars.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
He thought it was beneath him. He thought the script was diabolical. He just did it for the money.
But it's
and he was the one who played Obi-Wan.
Yeah,
he was. Yeah,
it was amazing performance actually.
Or
really sold it.
Ben to his friends.
Yeah, and Ewan McGregor actually did base a lot of his his performance off of that because he wanted to make it as close to that as possible. That's the irony. But Alec Guinness must have been a really good method actor if he could take something he didn't like and make it work. That's quite impressive.
Yeah,
I think he's definitely got a back catalogue which is more impressive than Ben Kenobi.
Of course, yeah. But I'm saying that taking a role you don't like and making it work is obviously not always easy.
But I suppose
I think. Sorry, no,
yeah, go on.
you go on.
No, you go on, Jamie.
Yeah. We'd like to think with us. Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say, like, for me, it's a case of, like, there are obviously those roles where people, they just absolutely hate them. So, for example, Robert Pattinson in the Twilight series absolutely despises that role and will go out openly to say that these films are terrible, do not watch them. I think Anna Kendrick was much the same.
The franchise.
About Twilight?
Yeah, and I think Twilight, yeah. So, and I think Anna Kendrick was much the same, but you can see two very different takes on that sort of contractual obligation towards it. Whereas Rob Pattinson is being very monotone, dull, and just getting on with it. Anna Kendrick is still giving it her all, even despite the fact that she does not like the franchise, and to this day probably will not have it on her portfolio.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I suppose to a degree there's a point when in acting where you get to when you can pick and choose, but sometimes actually you've got the parts come in and you need them and you do them. And in any fledgling career you'll have that. Everyone does jobs they don't want to do, but it's kind of getting yourself up that ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So on that note, well, I'm going to move to one of my questions, which was, well, one of the first things I was curious about is what do you personally feel is about the differences between, I suppose, amateur acting and so-called professional acting, if there really is a difference, and what that means to you?
I mean, to be honest, I think it's as simple as you get paid for one and you don't for the other. I think amateur acting gives you a lot more freedom in terms of experimental things. So you can find your acting style and you can explore so many different avenues. So, for example, through my university years, I was exploring through naturalist theatre, surrealist theatre, musicals to a certain extent, and just finding really my acting style there, which I still haven't quite found, but it's exciting to explore. I think professional is when obviously people have noticed you to a certain extent where, oh, he's really good in this, he's really good in that. Let's get him for this film. He's guaranteed talent. So we know for a fact he's going to be amazing for this role, which isn't always the case, but I think it's a lot more, you got that backing of, I've been paid to do these roles before, so you can rely on me to keep doing these sort of roles. I do think it limits you slightly unless you're really pushing for other ideas. And this is where the problem of typecasting comes in, where people are forced into, well, maybe not forced into roles, but they are given roles which are pretty much the same thing over and over and over again. And certain actors are okay with that, certain actors aren't. And for me personally, that's one of my worst nightmares, being typecast.
Being the next Jason Statham.
Yeah. Or Daniel Radcliffe in Harry Potter.
I mean, it would not be the worst thing in the world, obviously, to be like to that level of professionalism and to that level of identifiability where people do know you for those roles. But like, for example, Mark Hamill, one of my favorite actors of all time,
Really?
and he's known for. I mean, to be fair, he's more of a voice actor than an actual actor. So he was good in Star Wars, great in Star Wars. But it's the voice acting with the Joker in the Avatar: Last Airbender, all the voice acting roles that he's not really given as much credit for because it's not his face.
Yeah.
Who is he in Avatar?
He was Uncle Iroh in Avatar. No,
really?
Fire Lord Ozai, rather. Yeah, Fire Lord Ozai, the bad guy in that.
Oh shit! Okay, cool.
Mind blown, right? Just like, whoa, hang on.
Yeah. Is this voice acting?
I like that show. Yeah, it's a good show.
Yeah.
More towards voice acting for that one. Yeah, definitely. And I think Mark Hamill is one of those exceptional talents in terms of voice acting. Maybe not so much live screen acting because he does tend to go with the whole Joker ideal with most of his parts nowadays. And I don't know if that's just me, and maybe I'm the only one who thinks that, but it's either Luke Skywalker or the Joker, and no real middle ground there.
That's true. He's very, very good at both, though, to be fair. So I suppose that's just how you look where someone's going to...
No, absolutely, yeah.
Interesting. Lawrence, actually, do you want to give a bit of... And you might have something to say about this because your dad does acting, doesn't he? And you've had experience of that at the Quest is doing various things. So you got anything to chip in here? Yeah, because Quest and all that.
Well, what I find impressive about putting a play on a stage is just the immense amount of skills that are being thrown together that all have to work in sync with each other, not just once, but on repetitive nights. I think it's a really good experience, just with people who are good at acting, music, lighting, sound, costumes, makeup, people who are just good at moving shit off the stage and then bringing it back on when they need to. I think it's one of the most eclectic bunches of skilled artists in one craft is probably theatre.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like a ballet, the way things happen when everything's going on behind the scenes, preparing the next scene as the lines from the previous scene are wrapping up.
Yeah.
Do you get stage fright, Jamie?
Do I get stage fright? Yeah, I'd say all the time. Literally every single time I go on stage. It's just finding a way to deal with that. And I think early on in my career, it was definitely a case of I'd get on stage during rehearsals, I'd flub some lines, and that would instantly put me into a little spin of just, oh my God, I can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. I still get nervous and go on stage to this day. But it's knowing how to use that energy. And I feel like even when you mess up, you can still make a great performance. And it's just a matter of being able to work around those. So if you flub a line and someone notices it, you pick up on it and you make a joke of it and then you move on. One of the main teachings of most of my acting career has been the idea of accept and continue. So if you made a mistake, own up to it and then continue it. And just as long as you don't stop, as again, the show must go on. It's a constant thing that's very cliche and always overspoken, but it's so true, so very true.
I think that's bang on, mate, because I find as well, it's not about making the mistake. It's about how you then transform the mistake into still being part of the play or the song. So, if you make it obvious that it's a mistake, then the audience will kind of go, they'll go back from it. But for the most part, they won't know what the lines are.
Something didn't go right.
So you can just but you can get away with it, and they won't know any different, and then the play just continues.
No, exactly.
So I think it's just the way you cover it up.
I suppose your audience, the audience has a kind of leniency with a live performance anyway, because they do know things are going to go wrong. The only time they see things go wrong on television is when you see the outtakes or bloopers or whatever. But with a stage performance, people kind of expect that on the odd occasion something will go wrong. Sometimes they don't even notice at all. Sometimes people fluff lines, and the audience have picked up on it. The rest of the cast have, and it just carries on, and it's all forgotten with.
Absolutely, and sorry, go on, Tristan.
No, I was saying that's ad-libbing, isn't it? When you have if a whole group can ad-lib together, that's quite impressive. But I've not actually seen that. But I've heard.
Well, it's about getting back on track, isn't it? As quickly and succinctly as possible.
Yeah. So one person in the scene could forget a line, and then another actor could realise that that's what's going on, and then just skip to a bit where it hasn't become too obvious that they've moved too far along. But it doesn't make that one actor look like a bell end.
It's improvising, isn't it? Improvising on the spot to cover up a mistake is actually really clever.
You can help out your fellow actors and stuff.
And musicians do it as well. So, yeah.
So it's like if your character's supposed to say, I would like a cup of tea, and he can't remember the line, the other actor may say something like, you look like you could do with the cup of tea. And then that'll put him back on track.
Yeah, exactly. Just like that.
Flows on.
No, exactly.
It's really clever.
So you do actually rely about Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say you rely on the support of the actors around you to prompt you on and move you on in the least obvious way possible. But carry on, Jamie.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that sort of thing is absolutely fantastic. Especially when you've been with a group of people for so long, you just learn their mannerisms and you sort of bring that each individual flair to it. which just makes the performance come more and more alive. There's just that beautiful energy that people don't realize when everything's going. I mean, when everything goes smoothly, obviously that's exactly what you want.
Yeah.
But when you make a point of making those mistakes fantastic, rather than just sort of like, oh, it's a mistake. Oh my God, wait, everyone stop. We need to start this again. But rather than doing that, you're sort of like, okay, yeah, so I didn't ask for the cup of tea.
Yeah.
But a cup of coffee? Sorry, don't have it, mate. Vanilla espresso? No, I don't have it. Just keep, obviously within reason. And there are plays that utilize this to such amazing standards. Like the play that goes wrong. Sorry, Lawrence?
I said I'll have a crappuccino.
Yeah, literally, exactly like that. And you just riff off that.
Frappuccino. Yeah. Well, that's it, mate. Yeah, and like you don't have to make it obvious because the audience don't really know until you make it look like you've made a mistake. You know.
So do you do monologues? Do you do monologues, Jamie?
I mean, at some point in every actor's career, I think they're found with that one monologue that really just gets to them. And I've had a couple of monologues in my time that haven't really inspired me in that way. But I have seen other people with those monologues. For example, Denzel Washington in Fences. There are some absolutely astounding monologues in that film. And the film in general is just outstanding. I think the idea of monologue scares actors more than it should do, because it really does give you that long. It is very long-winded, unfortunately, but then that's where you bring your own energy, your own flair into it, and you look for those minute details. And I think this might even be easier in film than it is theatre to really get those minute details where you can see the struggle in the character's face. Whereas again, in theatre, you'd be more sort of like just getting your voice out there to be heard, and therefore maybe over-exaggerating slightly. But yeah, the idea of the monologue is not a terrifying one. Once you make it your friend, it's okay. It's all good.
See, I'm trying to get a friend of mine, an actor, to do an own YouTube channel. It doesn't have to be kind of public, but to take on other people's scripts and take sections where there are monologues within a film or a soap opera, and just to hone the craft. You know, I think it's a good kind of regimentation to do. You know, take some scripts and did you do, like, for instance, do you do accents and voices?
Well, it depends on how effective you think my accents are, of course. I do American fairly well, so you know. To be honest, I love the idea of voice acting and accents, and it's something I do. It drives my family insane. I just do the voices and accents all around the house, and I'll practice with different things. I'll play around with I'll practice with a couple of Russian ones, which I'm still not sure if I'm okay with those. The American ones are fairly easy ones. Scottish and Irish, again. But yeah, I just love the idea of like experimenting with those voices and just seeing what different characters come out of them. So one of the more unorthodox ways of me practicing these voices is through playing Dungeons and Dragons, for example. And I've got one character who is basically a massive orc who has a love for singing, and he's very polite to people. Whereas you think orc from like Tolkien, for example, very aggressive, very much like rah, 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 rah. He's very friendly and just goes around, hello there, my name's Mo, I'm going to sing your song now. It's just great to be able to play around with it, and I think that's one of the things that people miss out on with acting is it is really, really fun. You can just have good fun with it.
That's true. Yeah, I mean,
there was a lot for a long time in American blockbusters. English actors always used to end up playing Eastern European terrorists, didn't they?
Really? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, loads of films, Die Hard films.
How do you know they weren't Eastern European actors playing? Are you sure?
Well, Alan Rickson.
That's good game.
There's loads you could cite, but you know, they were kind of.
I mean, even as recently as a few years back with the Hitman's Bodyguard with Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson, and Gary Oldman was playing an Eastern European dictator in that. So
that's how he did this day.
He plays a lot of those.
Yeah, and a great film as well. Like fantastic, I thought.
What film was this?
The Hitman's Bodyguard.
Okay, I've heard
Bodyguard
of
or something like that.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So
it's good.
Yeah, let's get back to the beginning actually. So what I'd like to ask actually was how or why did you originally get into all this, like acting? Was it things you watched, or was it like what you did at school? What was the whole thing you did? How was it? What was the reasons, and how did it sort of really start?
Well, I think at first it was definitely a case of I wanted to build my confidence, and again, I was that sort of kid that would just hang out in the background, wouldn't really talk to people, and as the confidence grew, I found that I had a bit of a talent for it, and my teachers would recommend me to try out for more things, do this, do that.
Yeah.
It got to a point where I auditioned for drama school at 18 years of age and didn't get through the first time, which shattered my confidence, and then took a few years out. But the one thing I always came back to was I want to perform. I just love performing. 4 years later, I have 2 degrees behind me. As of the beginning of this year, I was performing in London for a couple of for an amateur dramatics group, which I was absolutely loving. Had my first pantomime experience, which was interesting. A very copyright-safe version of Beauty and the Beast. Instead of Cogsworth.
Well, adult pantomime.
Sorry, go on.
I assume.
You know what? I would absolutely love to do one of those, but it was very family-friendly, unfortunately, for this
No,
one.
but I mean,
maybe
US
next time.
adult. US adult. Recently.
Oh, me as an adult. Yes, no, yeah. So this was my first pantomime just first pantomime in general, and
okay.
Yeah, it was good fun, and I think that's the sort of thing I just want to get back into as soon as this there's something going on in the world right now. Probably not worth going into it right now.
No, you can. It's all about. You're welcome to if you want to.
It could be a COVID pantomime somehow.
Well, they've actually already announced some of the shows in London that are starting up again, so it's coming back bit by bit.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's good.
We remain hopeful.
Nice.
That's really good. So how are they managing to do it? Are they going to just do it all like distancing, or are they going to wait for the vaccine to come? This vaccine was announced today as well, so maybe it's all going to change with that. And I don't know.
Well, up until this second lockdown, from I've been keeping a close eye on it, and my actor friends have also been keeping a close eye on it. It's a case of just doing the social distancing thing, like separate a couple of seats between each audience member, plastic partitions where necessary. The actors all get tested, I think, weekly in terms of testing for COVID, all sorts of things like that. So that there are measures in place to keep people safe. And I think it's just a case of now making sure that theatres do continue on. And I think this is where the digital age of theatre may be coming in, where obviously not as many people are feeling safe enough to go out and go to the theatres, which is a huge shame.
Older people
certainly, yeah. And I think this is where the digital age theatre comes in, where we can start to project out some of these things to streaming services or live performances on YouTube. We saw the success of Hamilton on Disney Plus, for example, which was a huge thing. Huge thing. My little sister has watched it 5 times since it's come out, for example.
Oh, it was only out on Disney Plus. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the Broadway performance, it's absolutely phenomenal. I would heavily recommend it. It is missing that magic of live. Yeah. It's sung through musical. If you're not familiar with the story about the American Revolution and this particular man's influence on how America is run to this day.
Still, of course, part of
with like the creation of the Constitution. Yeah, we've got everything like that, and it's phenomenal. And if we got some more of those sort of shows, like National Theatre have been amazing with it, where they've been doing those shows from a few years back, and where they've got recorded footage, they're now playing it online and basically allowing people to have that theatre experience even at home, which isn't exactly the same, but we're working around it, and theatre makers especially are finding their ways around it. I don't think it's affected film and TV as much. It also has in some ways, but theatre definitely has taken a huge hit, unfortunately.
On that note, actually, before anyone asks any questions, Lawrence, you'd like to give a talk, tell everyone about how your father's done this online, hasn't he? Like doing a Zoom acting, isn't that correct for performance? For questions?
He did one. He did a play with. Are you familiar with Questers, Jamie?
Questers.
The theatre?
I'm not familiar with Questers, no, but Ealing's not too far from me, so I may have to get familiar.
Oh, fair enough. Yep. Yeah, well, they've been in Ealing as an amateur theatre for quite a long time, 70 years now or so. Anyway, my dad's been going there since he moved down from Aberdeen. He moved to West Acton sort of area. And anyway, he started in the 70s and then through the 80s. Then he took a break when he had a bunch of kids and he had to take care of them. And then he retired and got back into it. Anyway, he's he's been doing plays with them over lockdown. One of which I watched was on Zoom, and it was actually very well done. You know, so obviously you can just sort of green screen your background and create.
Oh wow, okay.
You know, you can create the scene,
which is more
you
like
can have an
filming.
office room, and then the next scene.
Which
they changed the background, and it's it's a sunny beach or whatever.
Which is more like filming in a weird, interesting way.
So obviously you still have costume changes, but everything's in your own house.
I like
my dad ended up playing 4 characters. It was quite good.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
I liked it. It was clever.
Quite a good challenge. I like it.
There's the kind of thing we could maybe think of doing. I mean, this is one reason I was
I think
Go on, Go on, Lawrence. Yeah.
I think it applies. I think theatre equates to Zoom better than like music. A lot more can go wrong with music, I think.
Yeah.
You know, if you had a band on and everyone's in their own thing, the audio lag could just fuck everything up. You know.
That's true. Obviously,
whereas with acting, you can work with it more.
Yeah, and obviously, if a band can be in the same room, they can live stream
together.
together.
I thought it was quite impressive.
I mean, if a band could live stream all together, that's okay. But if they're separate, I know what you mean. Depends on the situation. But that's another reason it's good to get to know you, Jamie, because we'd like to get we should probably consider how we could use acting performances with our PAC videos at some point. So we'll chat more about that to you. I'm sure if that interests you, doing more like that.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Okay, so
I think we should do that. Yeah, why not?
The next question I had was so obviously you mentioned this a little bit, but so you said the pandemic has affected things to an extent. So has it made a huge difference, do you feel, to what you've been doing, or has it been actually all right? Have you managed to sort of stay above board, with doing the acting stuff?
Well, unfortunately, it has taken quite an impact in terms of where I'm more used to the sort of theatre side of acting, and where I was using these amateur productions to just refine my skill set, build my skill set, and hopefully midway through the year I was hoping to actually go out to agents and start trying to get some more trying to get some paid work so I can get credits and start being involved professionally. And where this pandemic has hit quite hard in that, there have been opportunities in terms of online videos and stuff like that, which I've signed up to a few casting things in terms of Star Now, Universal Extras, basically anything just to keep the skill set sharp. But really the work has dried up, and I think it's one of those things that if you weren't already established, you would find it very difficult to get into it. Not impossible, but certainly much more difficult than it was, even as difficult an industry as is to get to in the best of times. It's definitely taken an impact.
Do you think that because we've been isolating ourselves to varying degrees and not able to perform, in ways we want to, when we finally have the freedom to put plays on stage and, bands out there and stuff, that the creative surge is going to be fucking magnanimous?
I mean, I really hope so.
I think, so do I.
There are just so many.
The energy explosion, man, is if you lock people in a cage for such a long time, I just think it's going to be amazing.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, even
I think it's one of those things. I think it's one of those things where people unfortunately have had nothing but spare time. You do have those creatives who are just, I need to do something productive. I just need to do something. Let me write something down. Let me write 1,000,001 ideas down. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I've actually started a few ideas. The problem I have is following through with them, because as soon as I get one idea going, it's like, oh wait, there's another idea. Okay, let's get it going. Wait, no, there's another idea. The problem for me has been focus, and unfortunately for me, I'm one of those people that I focus best when I literally have no time to do anything. That's when I get things done. I thrive very well under pressure. Yeah, they're very, very well under pressure. And as soon as that pressure's gone, it's like,
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So I get that.
You just step back and
I get that with creativity.
Really
With creativity, there's always that, isn't there? Where you're sort of it's easier to do something if you've got an audience, even if you don't care about audience that much. So for example, with my music, my writing, my stuff, which is none of it, which is professional yet, but it's just my own thing, apart from PAC stuff. It's harder for me to want to do it without having an audience. Luckily, we've managed to have video forms. We do these mics, which we got one again next Sunday and all that. We got all that stuff, but it's harder without an audience. Yeah, even a small audience, you want to have something. So I get that.
The beauty of theatre is, though, there's nothing quite like that pre-show murmur of the audience, say, wait in anticipation, and they're in all the stalls and all the circle and that, and you can hear them all mumbling away to each other, and you're all prepared to get out there, and you're waiting for the curtain to open. I think that's one of the greatest things about theatre.
Yeah, so exciting.
I think.
That's
I think Lawrence, you'd get the same thing with live music concert, wouldn't you, Lawrence? Like the same sort of murmur where everyone's waiting around.
That's it, exactly. And I've played with. I've been part of theatre productions as like in the band as well, and it's even there's even more, I guess, because everyone sits down just to watch what you're doing. Like when you're in a band, people are getting drunk and fucking around and dancing and coming in, getting distracted, going outside for a smoke, whatever. But in a play, they're just watching you the whole time. I think it's a different feeling, you know.
It's much more intense, obviously. Like I suppose it is interesting with the different kinds of acting as well. I mean, like I was saying earlier, but when I watched a lot of different television, obviously you can see it's different, but you can still see like there are different ways of acting, so to speak, obviously. And another thing I was curious about was, do you feel like then that theatrical acting, do you feel it's not got as much of a place now in film and television, that it's more of a different approach now? Do you know much about that? Is that because I've always thought now they try to be more subtle in film and TV than they used to. They used to be more. It was more what I've seen. I've watched a lot of older films and older television. They tend to be more theatrical. Like I was saying about William Shatner, for example, he's much more theatrical than say modern Star Trek actors or say old school like theatre. So you think that's true to an extent that now like theatrical acting is changed in the way they interact with the other disciplines? Or
I mean, it's definitely changed in terms of the disciplines, but I'd actually argue that my thought process has always been that if you want to really truly be successful in acting, then you must do something in the theatre at one point in your career. I think it's easier to transition from theatre acting to film acting than it is from film acting to theatre acting, or from TV acting, of course. I feel like it's a lot easier to transition between the theatre as your basis and then moving on. This idea of like giving 150% and knowing that you can dial down instead of keeping on having to add things. It's a case of, okay, you need to dial down that, be more like subtle in your approach, to be a little bit more like you have the emotion, but you're just giving too much at the moment. I find that, again, I don't know if this is the case, it's just my personal view on it. Where film acting is, again, that more subtle approach to it. When it gets to theatre, where it does have to be that little bit more outlandish, that little bit more exaggerated, I feel like film stars, TV stars would struggle a bit more, with the exception of soap operas, actually. I think that's very much on par with theatre acting in terms of slightly over-dramatic. So,
June Brown.com. I mean, I don't watch soaps. The only time I see them is if I go around the friend's house, or it's sometimes on around my mum's house. And I'm always transfixed with June Brown.com because she dominates the screen in every scene, and she's actually comes from a theatre background as well. I'm obsessed with her.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. She's amazing. I love her to pieces.
Yeah, read her Wikipedia start to finish.
Yeah, she's just brilliant.
Nice. I'm gonna have to check out some more soap operas. I haven't really watched many.
They're all the same, they're just bollocks. Yeah. But sometimes you find a gem amongst that cast, and
Hey, and he just catches time,
Well, that's an interesting point because, like, obviously, I mean, you must have experienced this, Jamie, when you've probably wanted to do certain roles, but you have to conform to what the people expect. Well, your company expects of you, or whatever. You know what I mean? Do the roles they tell you to, rather than what you want to do. Sometimes, you know what I mean?
Oh, of course, yeah. And there have been a couple of plays where I've wanted certain parts, and probably one of the biggest disappointments for me was when I was performing in the Crucible up in Leicester. We were doing a co-curve production with the local theatre, and absolutely fantastic. It's something they do with theatre on a yearly basis, which means people get more noticed. You just get to experiment all different things, get to see how it's like to work in a professional venue. And I was really looking forward to the part of John Proctor, which has been, to this day, one of my ideal roles to play just because of the nuance of it. And Daniel Day-Lewis's performance in the film version is phenomenal. But unfortunately, didn't get the part. They decided to go a different direction with it. In those sort of times, you just have to take that. I was still in the show, which is fantastic, and I just wasn't right for the part at that time. But there's not to say that it won't be the right part in the future. They decided to go a different direction, and honestly, for the fellow actors that didn't have those opportunities before, that now get those opportunities, it's just amazing to see how they grow that part and the things they do differently to what you would have done. It's all learning process. It's all amazing.
And on that note, as I was saying, we want to do like a lot of more different videos now as a pack, and on that sort of level, if there's anything like we think we could offer you where it's something where you could do something that you want to do, that'd be great, because I think that's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Like, because obviously there is that whole degree to which you have to conform with what people expect of you in the sense of either the audience or the people who you're doing it for, like the company. But if they can give you, if a company or a group or an organisation or say a collective like us could say give you an opportunity to do something you wanted to do, that's obviously quite a cool thing to do as well, because otherwise you're just doing what you want to do. You have to be able to follow your own dream, right?
Do you record yourself doing performances for obviously sort of practice purposes and that stuff, or maybe even for a show reel?
I mean, this is the one thing that I've personally struggled with in terms of showreel material, where I've not had the exposure to film TV where I've been in front of the camera. I'm very used to a live audience and people reacting to me in real time. So that's definitely one of the things that I want to improve over my acting career, and hopefully over the next couple of months where I've got a bit more free time, just really utilize that time and get used to performing on camera. Find those subtle nuances, stuff like that.
This is why I was bringing up monologues earlier, because you could actually just film yourself doing these parts, choose a load of different parts and film yourself, and then maybe five different roles, and then you could upload them to YouTube channel, and that could be basically like your show reel that you could send off or send links to promoters and agents.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And it could kind of
that's a great idea.
A good exercise for you as well, because you'd be able to do loads of different takes of them and actually finally hone it so that you get the performance right, and you'd actually be learning with that sort of process, wouldn't you?
Well, that's just it, and I think, yeah, exactly, and I think that's the most important thing as an actor, is that ability and the want to learn more. I'm still very early on in my acting career, but there's so much more I can learn, and even 20, 30 years from now, if I'm still continuing with the acting, there will still be so much more to learn and new things I've never come across before. I think that's one of the most exciting things about this industry, is you're never done. You're never done, and even when you're at the top of your game, there is still so much more.
Yeah,
and
it's
I
a
think
challenge.
that's one of the fascinating things, and that's
absolutely.
And never done. Yeah,
and that's true and that's true for all creativity, actually. I mean, I think you're specifically very much correct there, but also I think that can and should be the case for all creative disciplines, that there's no real limit to creativity. It's just what you do with it.
Of course,
how much do you think, how big you think. So I'm conscious of not wanting to run on too long. We'll finish in 7 minutes at 20 past. So the last main question I had, and then we can just sort of chat generally, is so what do you want to achieve as an actor generally, and sort of the whole thing? Have you got a game plan or anything? Or
I mean, I'd love to get to a point where I can finally make a living off of something I love, and this is something that for the past few years I really have been pursuing as much as possible, around other commitments and having to work. And if I could commit 100% of my time to this, I absolutely would. But unfortunately, that does require quite a bit of income behind you. So as soon as I get to a point where I can comfortably do this for the rest of my foreseeable future, I think that's the ideal thing. I don't particularly mind where I end up. If it's all theatre, if it's all film, if it's all TV, or a mixture of all three would be ideal. As long as I keep getting to learn, as long as I can make a viable career out of it, that's the dream. And it's just something I love doing, and something I want to keep doing.
Yeah. Never give up.
Yeah, man. To do something you love. I mean, it's as simple as that. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Have you had a moment so far in your acting career where that really hit home? Maybe it was during a performance and you were like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do with my life.
Oh God, where do I begin? I think one of the
Because
most
in the
recent
beginning,
memories I had.
surely you were just touching the toe into the water. But
Oh no,
like,
absolutely.
at some
Yeah.
point, you dived in.
Yeah, I think a couple of examples come to mind. My first was my first lead vocal solo in a musical as part of the St. Bride's Youth Theatre Group, and this would have been about 11 years ago or so, 11, 12 years ago. And again, coming from a background where I was a very shy child, almost no confidence whatsoever, and all of a sudden given this huge role where I'm lead singing on this thing, and it's huge, and I'm terrified. I get up for my first solo song, and I just sing. And towards the at the end of the show, my mum, my aunt, and my nan have come to the first show, and they're all in tears. I was like, "Oh my God, what have I done? What happened?" It's like, no. It's the fact that we've just never seen you like that before. We've never seen you with that level of confidence and doing it so well. Like, we're just so proud of you with that. So that was the first example, just in like, I could really do this as a thing. I could really do this as a career. And the second example was from my master's.
Awesome.
We were assigned to do a performance at UCL at the Petrie Museum. Basically like sort of aspects of Egypt and stuff like that, some of the smaller digs. And we got to create our own show for that, which I did direct, act, and write the most of the performance. Give myself a little bit less in terms of the acting, so I could focus more on directing and writing. And that ended up being one of the highest graded pieces I've had in my academic career. And to the point that there was one person coming from California who said about, oh, we could actually make something of this, let's get in contact. And unfortunately, we lost contact. But the fact that someone from overseas was actually looking at this as this could be a thing that we can continue to do. And it's just like amazing. It's such a thrill for someone to be that confident in your work, to truly make something more of it. It's just, wow.
It's a huge accolade, isn't it?
Feeling of,
Oh yeah,
and I almost forgot. Yeah, you're a singer too. I don't know. That kind of was almost on the side thing, but it's part of the same thing, isn't it? Really, for you, I guess. You kind of consider it to be the same discipline to your musical theatre, I suppose. It's like your background.
I mean, to be honest, I'm one of those people that will just sing absolutely anything, whether I have any business to or not. One of my favorite films of all time is Nightmare Before Christmas, and I don't know if you can see the tattoo here.
I saw when I met you. I remember. Yeah,
that's a brilliant film. To be honest,
I think singing for me is more definitely it's more of a hobby. But if I could make money off it, I wouldn't say no. But I think it's one of those passions that I'll follow regardless of whether I make a profession of it. And to be honest, I'd love the acting as well. Whether I make a profession of it, I just love to stick with it. Yeah. And what about yourselves? What sort of performances have you guys been involved with that really made you proud of what you've made of yourselves?
Tristan, you want to go?
Well, I mean, I just like stuff with just performing my stories and my music, like even mics and doing this stuff, PAC stuff, basically. Not really specific things myself. I've done things like read out poems or done music in front of like larger numbers of people. Once did that on a because I'm part of a Buddhist organisation, and I did a course once there, and we ended up performing in front of a lot of people. That was quite cool, but nothing massive. Apart from last year, we did a couple of PAC events where we had with our collective, where we did Hannaford's, a place in Kingston Hill, a uni bar, and I was just hosting really, but it was just really cool to just see the number of people who were there, and even this year we did one in February at.
That's the bit, because you came up with the idea and it manifested in a really good way. And I think the interesting thing is that I met Tristan at a pub called the Cricketers, if you know that pub.
I know the one, I know you know
the place now.
Yeah. The old Cricketers.
R.I.P.
And I met Tristan, and at the time I was going to poetry nights that me and my friends were organising in Hounslow, and I was like, oh, this guy would love these. So like just from one instant of watching Tristan perform at the Cricketers and thinking he would like get along with this poetry night. That was probably a few years ago, wasn't it, Tristan?
Yeah, and it was really
that
good.
then spawned.
Yeah.
That kind of sent the wheels in motion for you to want to start your own one.
Yeah, which you then joined, which is fantastic. Yeah, no, it's very true. It's both depends really. I mean, we should probably finish up now-ish. Unless you guys want to give a quick example each, or we could sort of like because we want to kind of.
Oh, Nick's not want to go yet.
Yeah, I mean,
all right, okay. So
that wasn't 7 minutes. Mate.
We'll go on 5 minutes. All right. Yeah.
I'm 52 years of age, and from about the age of 20, I worked in television primarily, but in post-production, and I did some obviously live TV shows as well over at Pinewood Studios, things like 8 Out of 10 Cats and Would I Lie to You and other shows. So my mum was always kind of the background stuff, but throughout that period I played in bands, and we played kind of big gigs at things like the Astoria and Guildfest and other venues around London. And I've always kind of been involved in the sort of entertainment industry, and I'm kind of proud of it. I'm not really someone who wants to be at the forefront and sort of do all that stuff. I'm more of a kind of technical background sort of person, but I love playing instruments. I love writing my own songs, and I write stories, and I'm in the middle of writing a screenplay at the moment and a novel. Both the same story. I was writing the novel, and someone asked me to write a screenplay of the novel.
Oh, you're writing a screenplay of that novel?
Yeah. The thing is, because I hadn't finished the novel, I got to the point in the screenplay where I needed a finished novel in order to take the bits out of the novel which would become the screenplay. So I'm back on track with writing. And I'm actually hoping lockdown was really good for me as a creative, because I spent so much time writing, and I managed to cross so many hurdles within the story, and and move it on. And that's what my main concentration. Obviously, I'm doing the PAC stuff as well, which I love. Interacting with other creatives and people, and you always get sort of ideas and inspiration from people, and hopefully that works as a two-way street. So that's kind of what my focus is. There we are.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Nice. He's got some great songs, man. Some he's done videos of and put on his Facebook.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. Definitely worth a listen. Yeah.
I'll link some over to you. Yeah, they're not love songs, but
and there are varying styles. Yeah, they're good. Yeah.
So how about you, Lawrence? What about?
I'd say for me, mate, Jamie, I just love playing drums more than anything, and like I think for me the best feeling was when people started dancing.
Yeah.
So like because people only dance when they like it. Because someone can't really dance just to be nice. It looks stupid. Yeah.
Well, you can.
So like, when people actually really enjoying your music, that feels incredible.
Or when you've like got that crowd so engaged with you.
That point after a few years. Yeah, but that doesn't come straight away. You have to be shit for a few years.
No, of course.
But that's what makes it that much sweet. That's what makes it sweeter when you finally get there.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
It's quite interesting what you just said made me think actually when you were saying about you can't really dance things you don't really enjoy, and I mean obviously like that's something I always
not
found
properly, no.
That's why I found with going to nightclubs, because most of the music has tended to be shit. Unless a really good song would come on, I tend to be like. There's another example with theatre that's interesting, because with theatre you can't often. It's not always true, but generally speaking. And then if you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but most theatres, although you can get a drink if you're an audience member, it's not really the same thing, is it? You don't tend to get drunk during a performance, do you? If you're watching something, you know what I mean? If you're sitting down, it tends to be more sober.
Well,
otherwise the aisles
depends entirely on the show.
Plastic pint glasses, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. I think for the theatres I performed in, it's usually a case of you get a tiny, like either a half pint or a full pint of beer, cider, whatever, and actually a one and done for that half of the performance. You don't really have time to get drunk.
Yeah.
People do find a way around it though. They may or may not sneak in their own beverage. So.
Well, you mean sorry? Do you mean actors? Just to clarify, do you mean? Sorry, just to clarify, do you mean the performers or the audience? Are you speaking of? or both?
Sometimes both. It depends entirely on how much you're enjoying the performance. To be honest.
It depends on how it affects you. I've worked with actors who would always drink before they perform. You know, and it's just something they got used to over time, I guess. Like, I don't know. Maybe it just takes the edge off before a performance. But you don't want it to take
Richard
too much.
and Richard Harris.
You want a bit of edge. You know.
So what was that you said, Nick, about Richard Harris?
Richard Harris and Richard Burton. They were all kind of. They like to have a drink to kind of get them in the spirit, as it were.
Yeah.
And
musicians, I mean, it's even worse with musicians.
Oh yeah, at the Mike nights, we always used to have a thing that the cricketers where like the person who hosted the night would get 3 free drinks, and I remember because I used to host occasionally, I'd get that, and the person who performed would get 1 free drink. Every person who performed would get 1 free drink. You remember that, Nick? For the quiz?
Yeah, I hosted loads of them. I had loads of free drinks.
Yeah, of course.
So
we're going to stop recording in a second, but we can continue chatting off a little bit if you guys want. But thanks so much for coming on board, Jamie. Any last questions, guys?
No, I think I'm all done.
That was phenomenal.
Just thanks for coming on, Jamie.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Phenomenal. We can continue chatting.
Good luck with your acting post-COVID.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Indeed.
Sure.
We look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yes. So, thanks so much, guys. We'll keep on talking for a bit, but we're going to stop recording now. So, thanks so much. Have a great night, all. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.